Hello, and welcome to Your Happy Healthy Pregnancy Over 35 online event. I'm your host, Brianna Williams, Pregnancy Life and Health Coach. And today I'm sitting with Dr. Laura Van Bryce. Dr. Laura Van Bryce graduated from Logan College of Chiropractic in 1979 and recently received her FDNP certification, which is the Functional Diagnostic Nutrition Practitioner. She is known for her sincere, innovative, intuitive, and holistic approach, and has helped thousands of people change their lives for the better. Her approach utilizes a comprehensive analysis looking for underlying fundamental root causes of disease. Welcome, Dr. Laura. I am so glad to have you with us today.
Thank you, Brianna. I'm happy to be here, and I'm excited to see how our interview goes.
Okay, so today we're talking about preparing to conceive, a conversation about what it takes just to have our bodies in optimal health so that we can prepare to get pregnant. So I wondered as we got started, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about why is it important to get healthy prior to pregnancy, and what kind of things we want to pay attention to.
Right. Well, I think getting healthy prior to pregnancy in and of itself is a stress on the body. And we want to get rid of as much stress as we can. And we also want to make sure that we're giving our baby as many good nutrients and keeping toxins out of our body that could potentially end up in our babies. We want to have the energy to carry ourselves through. I mean, I remember with my pregnancies, I've had 2 of them, being fatigued in the first few months. I remember feeling nauseous. And I think there are things that we can do to boost ourselves up prior to getting pregnant so we don't experience those things so much. I also think that building up our core muscles, particularly as we have gotten older, generally our core muscles may be weaker, and we need those muscles to help hold the baby up and to protects our backs, and our body from the stress of having this big ball in front, which stresses our low back or causes pain down our legs, or any number of different things. So overall, I think getting our bodies prepared ahead of time is important.
Yeah. And so what might somebody, like right now, like let's say they're wanting to get pregnant, they're probably a little bit of feeling of like this pressure of time. I feel like it's coming from the outside world and there's pressure with time. So they want to get started. They want to keep continuing on, but maybe there's something that they should look in their body first. What are some signs, some things we want to pay attention to that might say, hey, I'm not quite ready yet. Let's optimize our health first, and then
Right.
we can.
So I utilize the Dress for Health protocol, and what that is it's diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, and supplements. So I'll kind of break that down and go through each one a bit. Mm-hmm. So with the diet, there are so many different diets out there and fad diets, things like that we can get on, but we don't necessarily know which is the best for our body, and we're all very different. So some people do really well with a particular kind of diet, and their best friend or their neighbor, puts on weight and feels terrible on it. So I think it's important to figure out for you what's your best diet, because I think that's a basic place that we start with our health. One of the programs that I utilize is an online program called metabolictyping.com. And there is a small cost to it, but anybody can get on and take an online questionnaire, and it will come back and it'll tell you what are the best foods for you. It really kind of looks at your genetics, not so much with doing an actual genetic test, but what based on the answers to your questions, it tells you where you are and what would be good for you. And in addition to that, we also need to take into account food sensitivities. I'm sure you're aware that, a lot of people are having more and more food sensitivities, gluten, dairy, corn, eggs, some of the more common ones. And then there are other food sensitivities, some latent that don't even actually show up for maybe 5 days. So you would never know that you were sensitive to that food.
And what do you
So,
mean by show up?
well, what I mean by that is that you'll be experiencing some symptoms of food sensitivity, but you won't know that it's coming from the food. And so I remember years ago, I did a finger prick test with a lab, Meridian Labs, and it tested those latent food sensitivities. And so some of the highest ones that came up for me were like eggs. Well, I had no idea that I was sensitive to eggs. I have Hashimoto's. So, I really need to pay attention to my food sensitivities. So what we do is we look at the metabolic type diet that you were given, and then we do blood tests for different food sensitivities. And so then we remove those foods that you're sensitive to. And that gives us a good basis to start with, to figure out what your best diet would be. And then we also, from there, you need to figure out your macronutrients. So of those, how much, if you looked at your plate, how much should be protein and fat, and how much should be, say, carbohydrate? And that isn't a test that can be done online. It's more, you have to work with it yourself on a daily basis.
So it's experimentation.
Yeah, experimentation. So, we have a chart that you wrote in what you ate and what kind of proportions so that you can monitor, and then you check yourself 1 to 2 hours afterward and see how you feel. What good symptoms are you experiencing? Are you feeling satiated? Do you have a sense of well-being, or are you still feeling hungry, craving sugar and coffee, and feeling like something's not quite right? So then you monitor the macronutrients and you come up with kind of a formula for yourself. And you may discover that maybe in the morning you need more protein, and maybe in the evening you need more carbs or something else. But I think you understand what I'm saying. So that's how we work with tweaking diet.
Mm-hmm. And I can imagine with your macro ratios too, it would change depending on your activity level for the day. Like, so if you're doing something very cerebral, maybe you'd want more protein, but if you're active and you're running around and doing stuff, then some more like whole food carbs, probably, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, totally dependent also on your activity. But I think what this does is it helps you learn to figure it out on your own, because I think that's one of the things is that, our health is something that we need to be responsible for ourselves. And so how do we learn to do that? And this is one of those ways. Right.
So just part of it is tweaking and paying attention to how your body feels when you're eating different foods at different times, different activity levels. You also talked about food sensitivities, and you mentioned blood tests. And I'm curious to know if you've seen food sensitivities change. So something that somebody might initially be reacting to, is sensitive to, maybe once they've like begun some of these protocols or they're healing their body, they're not as sensitive to those things. Have you ever seen that happen?
Sure. So what we do is we tell people to avoid those foods for 90 days. And then we ask them to slowly introduce them back in, one at a time. Mm-hmm. And so then they can see how they feel.
Right. And then how long do you, as they're reintroducing food? So you talked about some of the common ones. Dairy is a big, dairy can be a problematic. What else did you say? You talked about like wheat. Oh, maybe you didn't say wheat.
Yeah,
wheat
gluten,
is a common. Gluten.
Eggs.
Sometimes, yeah, and especially if you have an autoimmune disease and nightshades. So you
Yeah.
take out all these foods and focus on really good, well, what can you eat during this period? If you're taking out all the things that might be
Well,
trigger
so
foods.
um, the metabolic typing test that I spoke about, it's going to tell you specifically what foods you can eat. For instance, I'm a parasympathetic dominant, and so I need more stimulatory foods like, I think, it was buffalo and elk and things like that. Whereas like eggs or bacon were sort of toward the bottom of the list. And then, I have to be careful with my carbs and but it tells you what foods you can eat. The other thing is the if you do an MRT food sensitivities test, so it's MRT.
Okay.
Yeah, it will tell you, it will break down foods. There's 170 foods that they test. And there's foods in green, which are the ones that you should eat. And the ones at the top of your list are ones that are you're definitely less sensitive to. So those are good foods to eat. Then as you get down, it goes to yellow foods, which are cautionary, and then red foods, absolutely avoid. So that you'll be able to, it's best to eat from the green foods on your food sensitivity test using MRT.
And green, not necessarily meaning green leafy spinach and things, but green that's on your
It's like
metabolic
go.
test.
It's like go, caution, and stop.
Yeah. So what is a metabolic body type? Like what are the different body types? Can you tell us about that?
Actually, I can't tell you all of them. There's 9 different ones.
Okay,
And
that's fine.
yeah.
But you said, so what's yours again?
It's a parasympathetic.
Okay. And what else do we learn about a parasympathetic from this metabolic typing?
Basically, the metabolic typing is really just meant to give you foods that you want to utilize. And so my body goes through carbs too fast, so it's going to drop my blood sugar too fast. So it is really meant to help balance your blood sugar. Yeah, but somebody who is sympathetic, that food is going to be too heavy for them. They won't be able to digest it. They need to shift more toward carbs to make it easier on their digestion and keep their blood sugar balanced.
Okay.
That makes sense, right?
Yeah. So can we talk a little bit about toxins in our environment? You've mentioned things that, especially like fillings in our teeth, exposure to metals, and how might this affect our health as we prepare for pregnancy?
Sure. So, in my age range, I'm not, I had a lot of silver fillings, and the silver fillings, every time you eat or chew or you've got hot tea or coffee going by, you're leaking a little bit of that mercury from those silver fillings, and that goes into your brain and throughout your body. So as you have a baby in utero, you start releasing things. For instance, your bone is going to start to remodel. And so and lead is something that's stored in bones. So you end up getting lead that is leached out of your bones, and it ends up in your baby. And the same thing is going to happen with silver and mercury. It will end up being transferred to your baby. In fact, I think I saw a study that said your oldest child will have the most mercury delivered to them if you had silver fillings. Then as far as other toxins, well, we have a lot of toxins in our food supply now. So we have pesticides like glyphosate that is all through our culture, our water system, in our world, our air. Um, that's very destructive to our systems, and it's also very destructive to the microbiome inside of our gut. So that's the bacteria. It's actually an antibiotic, and so it kills off some of the good bacteria. When you kill off the good bacteria and the bad bacteria gets to grow, and then you're passing food through, they're eating your food producing toxins.
Mm-hmm.
So we end up auto intoxicating ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So there's all sorts of medications and toxins in our water system now.
Can I pause for a second now? Okay.
Okay. So let's see what else. There's toxins in our water from, medications, things like that people are peeing out. But they've also put fluoride in the water, and chlorine can be a challenge for people with Hashimoto's and fluoride. And I think there's a lot of things we just don't know about, or I certainly can't name all of them off. There's a lot of toxins in our skincare products. I think I heard that the average woman puts on like 512 synthetic chemicals daily from her skincare products, from shampoo to lotion to makeup. And 60% of those are actually absorbed by the body.
Yeah, the skin is like a sponge. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So I think we get a lot of toxins from there.
I wonder, can we talk a little bit about like, well, what can we do? So somebody's listening to this and like, oh, I want to take action now. What can they do if they've got mercury fillings in their teeth? What might you recommend?
So if you have mercury fillings in your teeth, if you need to get them out, and I say that because, so mercury fillings are never good, but when they've been in there a while and they're breaking down, they're worse. So if you have that situation going on, you want to go to a biological dentist who has all the equipment to absorb the mercury as they're taking it out, and it's not going airborne and it's not being reabsorbed into your body.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
The other thing is you can take some binders and some vitamin C, some things like that. There's a couple different protocols that you would do ahead of time to take to absorb ahead of time mercury, and also have less toxins in your body. So as you're pulling them out, as they're being drilled out, your body's able to handle the absorption of some of them. And then you keep taking the binders for a couple of days to keep binding up the heavy metal to pull it out. So that would be one thing. If I had new mercury fillings and I wanted to have a baby like really soon, I don't think I would necessarily disturb them if they're not totally breaking down, because there is a certain amount that you're going to get absorbed if you
Just by removing them.
By removing them. So it's a intelligent call that you have to make there.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
On the other hand, if you weren't trying to get pregnant, I would try and get them out soon.
Yeah.
We just don't want to introduce a lot of extra mercury in your tissues, that your baby could be absorbing.
Mm. Yeah. Okay. And now let's see. Oh, go ahead. What else?
I had something in mind, and we were talking about, so also there are detoxes that I would recommend that every mother do some kind of detoxification before she gets pregnant. And
how much before she gets pregnant?
Well, probably within I don't know, 3 months, 6 months, or,
Okay. So maybe not like right before. You don't want all those toxins leaving your body if you think you
well,
might get
actually,
pregnant.
um, I think that, you know, it's a good question. I think within a few months. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. And I use different product lines. And I do use herbs, is what I'm trying to say. Like you can do detoxification just with using juices, for instance.
Mhm.
Um, but I don't think that it's strong enough in the toxic world that we have. So I've used things like True Cellular Detox. I use Cellcore Bioscience products.
Mm.
I've used some
And what
detox.
are these?
Um, well, they're product brands, and they have a comprehensive detox protocol. So what they do is they're meant to initially open up what we call your organs of elimination, your emunctories, so that they're going to initially open up your liver, your kidneys, your colon, maybe get the cell membrane on your mitochondria working properly, so that when you actually start the detox, you can get them out, because so much of us already have a very congested liver or colon, uh, things like that. And so we need to open these up, and then we can do a deeper level of detoxification with herbs and binders.
Mhm.
Um, and then with the True Cellular Detox, they actually go into detoxing your brain, which would be great, if you've got a lot of mercury or aluminum or things like that. So depending on how in depth you want to go, but the True Cellular Detox program, it's a minimum of 90 days. And
Okay.
generally, we recommend you go longer with more brain detoxes. So, if you really wanted to or felt like you needed to deeply get into doing this, if you have some kind of chronic disease already, this might be, particularly a place for you to go.
So where do you recommend that they go? If somebody,
Um,
if somebody wants to do like a,
Oh, if that, well, I do that with my patients. So I would just have them email me or call my office and let them know that, or let me know that they're
okay.
interested. And then I do a free 15-minute consultation with people to just have a conversation with them. That way we can see if we're compatible, if we're a good match, and if I can help them out.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. And if somebody wanted to do just kind of a smaller detox on their own, is there some herbs or what would you recommend they do?
Well, I would do something that's already put together, that's been researched and is comprehensive. I rather than just try and make an at-home detox. Um, the at-home detox you could do. You could do it with juices and some minimal sort of amount of foods. But I just have found that using the more comprehensive package programs that have been researched and put together are good. I used to use, when I was working with weight loss, I would use the Solutions 4 detox, which is a shorter detox. You could do it for, they have ones that are a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I would probably do one that was more than a week, I would do one that lasts 21 days or a month or somewhere in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about sleep. I know that you really emphasize the importance of sleep with your clients for optimal health. Will you tell us just a little bit about some tips and tricks to help us get the sleep we
Sure.
need?
So I think sleep is very important for overall health. And for recovering, it's really good for weight loss. And I think that our society has made it a lot less important than it really is. and that, our society has really been moving forward, and saying you don't need that much sleep. Like
as a sleep is somehow laziness or something.
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think we're overstimulated these days, and it's so easy. And I'm speaking from my own personal experience. It's so easy to get caught up on the computer. There's so much out there. I love learning and love exploring, but I sure notice that if I stay on my computer close to bedtime, I have a hard time sleeping.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, that blue
certainly
light.
certainly you can turn on the blue light, and I think that does help. But it's also that stimulation too. So I recommend that people get to bed between 9 and 10, and get 7 or 8 hours of sleep. And
I really
so,
like to emphasize closer to the 8 hours too, right? Because it's like if we say 7 and then it's closer to 6.5 and then 6 and then
okay, 8 to 10.
there you go.
Okay, 10 is probably too much, but unless you're just recently pregnant, and then maybe not so much. But so a couple hours before bed, for most people, it's best not to eat. But on the other hand, if you do have some blood sugar issues, you may want to eat a little bit right before bedtime, because you want to make sure that your blood sugar doesn't drop while you're sleeping. One of the ways you know that your blood sugar is dropping is you wake up in the middle of the night all of a sudden, and it's like what's happened is your blood sugar has dropped and your adrenals have kicked in. And so you've got this adrenaline rush going on, which you don't necessarily realize what it is, but it means your blood sugar dropped too low. So, and then a couple hours, I think, before bedtime, you probably want to stop work, any kind of work. And you also want to stop your screen time, at least an hour. I find even an hour isn't too much. It is not. A couple hours, I think, can be really helpful. So that means, shouldn't be on your cell phone. You shouldn't be on your laptop. You shouldn't be even watching TV. Like read, have a conversation. I think all those things can help with sleep. And I also recommend you don't watch scary movies shortly before, sleep too. I think that stimulates your adrenal glands too much in your whole body. So, have something much more relaxing or funny. Keeping your room fairly cool is also important.
And like what temperature do you recommend?
Well, I was at a seminar recently, and they recommend 66 to 67 degrees. I haven't, checked my room temperature, so I'm not sure, but that comes from some of the best. That came from came from Brendan Bouchard, who is very well known. He's I forget what they call him.
He's like a business consultant, right?
He is, but it's high performance. He's a high performance business coach. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
And then I really find it helpful to really have a very dark room. So blackout curtains I find to be very helpful. You may want to put something over any light that you have in your room, like my cell phone or my laptop or computer, having something covering those lights.
Or leave them out of your room completely if that's possible.
Yeah, totally. Eye masks, I think, can be helpful. Brendan Bouchard also had recommended some noise canceling type device or meditation music. Personally, I don't find that helpful. I find it irritating and harder to sleep, but I'm mentioning that because maybe other people will find that meditation music helpful to help them get to sleep.
Yeah. Or especially if they live in like a city area where there's maybe a lot of traffic outside, and something that's kind of noise canceling might be soothing.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's one of those things you need to experiment with.
Yes. Yeah.
For sure. I also find, relative to sleep, actually, that if I eat foods with preservatives or chemicals, things like that, I have a hard time sleeping. So I have to be really careful with my diet. So
Mhm.
obviously coffee too late in the day or, can impact you. And some people, coffee just impacts, and you should stay
Mhm.
away from caffeine. That's something you need to experiment with too.
Mhm. Okay. Now, what about stress? I know you work with a lot of people that have some hidden stressors, and you've done some lab work to help identify this. What can you tell us about stress?
Right. So, first off, I mean, there's obvious stress, like we have stress from work, or we have emotional stress or relationship stress. So those are kind of the outside stressors that we kind of know we have an issue with them. They're fairly obvious to us. And doing what we can to decrease our stress levels, I think is important. So if you know there's something at work that's stressing you out and you can work with fixing it, um, I think you should figure that out. Also, relationships,
Mhm.
they can be big stressors. They can be big helps, but, we're supposed to learn from relationships. And so, um, what's happening with your relationships? Are they toxic relationships? Are they ones you need to start releasing? Um, or are there just some issues that you need to discuss and really, work out with your
Mhm.
partner or your family member or a friend?
Yeah.
And then,
Relationships are so key. It's interesting. Just sorry to interrupt here, but it's such a part of who we are as people. And so, if your relationships aren't supportive, then what can we do to create that supporting? It's one of the topics I end up focusing on a lot with my clients. Is just that's what they bring up is their relationships, and so I love that you're mentioning it here, and it's so important.
yeah, absolutely. Um, so, maybe they need to find the right kind of counselor or do, some of the other things like, I don't know, tapping or Psych K or different things like that to help people deal with, that kind of stress. But then there are these hidden stressors. So the hidden stressors. Oh, and one other thing around stress is I certainly find taking a vacation really helps me out. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so if you're finding that you're really stressed, probably the last thing you want to do is take a vacation. Like you've got so much stuff going on, you can't imagine taking a vacation. But I think sometimes taking a vacation, especially if you're trying to get pregnant and you're stressed out, is known to get you pregnant, right? So,
Yeah, yeah, it can be huge. Huh? Yeah.
yeah. So let's talk about labs and hidden stressors.
Mm-hmm.
Um, well, first off, just relative to digestion, how you digest your food can make a big difference. Do you have enough hydrochloric acid in your system? As we get older, we all have less hydrochloric acid and less digestive enzymes. So when we want to digest our food well, we may need to add some of these things back in. So um, there's a lot of people who end up getting like H. pylori. H. pylori is a bacteria that sits in your stomach and it causes a decrease of hydrochloric acid. So there are several ways to test for that. You can do a stool test, you can do a breath test. But basically, if you find that you have H. pylori, you want to get rid of it. You want to take the herbs that are going to kill it off. There's medications too. It's just I'm a chiropractor, so I use herbs, but you could go to your medical doctor and get a medication that would help get rid of it. Um, but once you get rid of it, then your hydrochloric acid can start to rebuild itself, and you'll be able to handle taking a hydrochloric acid uh, capsule, to also help you with that. If you have H. pylori, you don't want to take hydrochloric acid. It's going to burn your stomach because the bacteria is in there aggravating the tissues in there.
Okay.
Um, you want to make sure you're taking some some probiotics, or you're eating prebiotics, which are going to be, you know, some vegetables and fruits, things like that, that are going to feed the proper bacteria in your gut. So, and you can also have a lack of nutrients. And there's a couple different ways that you test for that. I use blood tests. So there's a micronutrient blood test that you can do. And this actually tests for different nutrients that you're missing in your cell. And I think these are actually somewhat genetically based, because each of us will have a harder time absorbing certain nutrients than others. So if you find on this test that you're low on certain nutrients, you can supplement for those. And
Or eat
even
more
in
of those. Eat more of those foods that contain those nutrients.
Yep, you can eat more of those foods that contain those too. In fact, on the test, they tell you what foods you can add in for that too. Even on your regular blood test, they're going to test you for iron and B12 and some things like that. So you can see some of that on a regular lab test. Let's see what else. I think doing a stool test, testing your gut flora, your microbiome, can be really important, because all of us, you know, we have healthy bacteria in our gut, and then we have not so healthy bacteria and viruses and parasites. We all have that. But how in balance is it? Like, for instance, we all have some candida in us, but we don't want the candida to get out of balance and take over. Candida can create a lot of health issues. So we need our healthy bacteria balancing the less healthy bacteria. So doing a stool test can tell us what kind of balance we have in there. And if even some of the good bacteria that we have is out of balance, then sometimes we need to kill off some bacteria so that it can repopulate with good, healthy bacteria, flora, and get more in balance.
Okay.
And certainly if parasites are showing up, we want to get rid of those. So there's herbs that will get rid of those. There's also medications that will get rid of them too.
And it sounds like the herbs have fewer side effects than the medications, probably. But then with herbs, you still want to be careful, right? You probably want to do it under the advice of somebody who knows about herbs.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
And then you want to start adding in the good bacteria too, you know, once you start killing things off, after you've been killing things off. There's tests that are looking for oxidative stress.
What is the test called?
BioHealth has an oxidative stress test. It's their 101. And as we're looking for that, those are creating free radicals. You know, free radicals are known to cause cancer. I know we're not talking about cancer here.
But we are talking about health.
Yeah, we're talking about health. We want to, you know, cut that down and not create DNA damage. So we may need to take an antioxidant. Then we're looking on lab tests. We're also looking for liver toxicity, and that can show up in several different ways with different lab tests. We're looking for that will show up on a blood test. It could show up on a hair analysis or a urine analysis. Maybe we're looking for heavy metals toxicity. You know, another thing is we're just looking at our symptoms. So, you know, how good is our mental clarity? Have we been losing our mental clarity? That's sort of a sign that maybe we're, you know, getting more toxic. Or how's our mood? How does stress affect us? Are we overwhelmed with it? Sometimes it's a toxic overload. Also, our weight. If our weight just keeps going up and we can't seem to control it, sometimes doing a detox is really going to help us lose weight, because the fat cells store toxins in them. So they keep getting bigger, and then the body, to protect us from the toxins, will put more fat around them.
Mm.
So sometimes when you want to lose weight, you just need to do a detoxification program. The other thing I want to...
Oh yeah, I know we're getting close to your time here, but please give us, what else were you going to say?
Okay, so tooth infections are a big issue if you're trying to get pregnant, and sometimes you don't realize you have them. But I know my brother-in-law was talking about years ago, his mother hadn't been able to get pregnant for years and years, and she gave birth to him, I think, after the age of 40, but she had a lot of tooth infections, and when she had all her teeth removed, unexpectedly, she got pregnant with my brother-in-law. And I think that's actually somewhat well known, that that's something that you need to check out. And these days they have like special CT scans and x-rays or cone beam x-rays that can see infections in your teeth or your gums that even an x-ray won't point out. Okay. So getting those removed, fixing any what they call cavitations, which are infections where a tooth already has been pulled and the bone has developed, but there's a space in there and you end up with an infection in there. Those can keep you from getting pregnant. So,
Dr. Laura, this has been so helpful. I really appreciate you on this. And I am trying to be careful of your time. I know you have a free gift for our audience, and kind of leading into that, it's really another area of our health that can significantly, in fact, impact pregnancy. Will you tell us about it?
Sure. So I have a PDF that talks about thyroid and how it can be a huge impact on our health. And in fact, a lot of times, if the thyroid is having difficulties, you'll have difficulty getting pregnant, and you could develop Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune thyroid condition, which will keep you from getting pregnant again. So there's treatment though, so not to worry. Just know that if you have it, you need to treat yourself for it.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. Yes.
Yeah. But I have a list of 40 different symptoms that are associated with thyroid that you wouldn't necessarily associate with thyroid. So if you download the PDF, you'll be able to look at that and compare your symptoms to it to see if maybe you want to get your thyroid checked out. There's a number of different blood tests that you would do that with. And if someone wants help with that, I can certainly help them out with that too. But that's my gift. And also my other gift is that I give a free 15-minute consultation. So if someone wanted to email me or call my office, we can just set that up and have a conversation. Sometimes, you just have a question or you don't know who to reach out to. And I just want to say, if you want to, feel free to reach out to me.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And where can people find you?
My email is drlaura@drlauravanbryce.com.
And what you spell that? You have a unique spelling.
It's DRLAARA at DRLAARAVANBRYCE.com.
Perfect. And your website?
drlauravanbryce.com. It's really easy. I'm all over the internet there.
Perfect.
And you'll find my phone number on my website there.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Laura. I appreciate you so much. Is there any last words of wisdom that you wanted to share with this audience?
I think just don't be afraid of getting pregnant after 35. And I think that keeping a positive attitude and really looking at your health issues, hidden stressors. If they're not obvious ones, I would look at the lab work, and I take a vacation.
Take a vacation. I'm
Take a
there. I'm so
vacation.
there. Yeah. That's great advice. So thank you so much, Dr. Laura. I appreciate you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we'll see you later. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Mhm.